Stocks continue to sell off on Wall Street. The Nasdaq falls nearly 2%, sliding into correction territory, while the Dow Jones falls for the sixth session out of the last 7. Meanwhile, the U.S. economy grows at 4.9% in the third quarter, its highest in 2 years, as consumer spending remains strong in spite of higher interest rates and inflation pressures, among other headwinds. Stocks in the Asia-Pacific trade largely with gains. The GIFT Nifty also signals a flat start for the Indian market. Crude prices fall. Brent trades at around $88 a barrel as the outlook on demand remains unclear. Rising inventories in the U.S. also weigh on prices. Reliance Industries will report its numbers post-market hours today. Steady growth is expected in the digital services and retail businesses, while a strong refining margin is expected to be offset by weak petchem spreads. And apart from Reliance Industries, also watch for earnings from pharma majors Dr. Reddy's and Cipla, Maruti Suzuki, Bharat Petroleum, SBI Life and Bajaj Finserv from the Nifty will also report their second quarter numbers today. Good morning and welcome to Power Breakfast. I'm Pavitra. Those are the top headlines. There's a lot for us to talk about today, both in terms of the global setup, of course, the conflict in West Asia, the kind of weak handover that we've got from the US. But today is also going to be a lot about the domestic cues because, like we were pointing out, we have 7 big companies, 7 of the Nifty companies, which are going to be posting results, including Reliance Industries. So let's just kickstart the show by looking at what's going on across the Asian markets, which, you know, in spite of the fact that we did get quite a weak handover from the US, are looking quite good right now. So you have Nikkei, which is really leading the gains right now. That is up over 300 points. So looking quite good over there. The Hong Kong market is on your screen. It's up around 0.9%. Taiwan is around 0.6% in the green as well. And most Asian markets have actually pulled up a little bit more in the past few minutes. So the only ones which are still seeing a little bit of red, and it's not too much at all, is Shanghai and Straits. But of course, remember, this is coming after a week of heavy-duty selling in these markets. So that is what's happening across Asia right now. Let's also pull the GIFT Nifty up for you, and that is showing us that the start for our own markets after the steep cuts that we saw yesterday could be very, very flat with just around 2 points in the green for where the implied open could be. So that is the Asian picture. But let's also talk about the U.S. market because Wall Street ended Thursday's trading session lower. So the Dow was down around 250 points. The S&P 500 was down over 1%, 1.2%. And the tech-heavy Nasdaq once again fell the most. It's into the correction territory now, and it closed with losses of over 1.5%. Now, Amazon also reported a better than expected third quarter with revenue jumping around 13% for Q3. And the stock, in fact, gained around 5% in aftermarket hours. But remember, the stock had also fallen 6% in the previous session. So, you know, do keep that in mind. In some important macro cues from the United States, the U.S. economy grew faster than expected in the third quarter, with the GDP rising at an annualized pace of 4.9%. And the estimate that the street had was of around a 4.7% kind of growth. So that is the key data point that we're looking at from the US. The rise in GDP is actually the biggest gain that we've seen since the fourth quarter of 2021. And the sharp increase can be, you know, attributed to a lot of contributions from consumer spending, increased inventories, exports, residential investments, as well as government spending. So that is a very solid number coming in on the US GDP. But let's also bring you some important opinion. This comes in from Mohammad El-Arian, Chief Economic Advisor at Allianz, as well as Nathan Sheets of Citi on what they think of this GDP print. Listen in.
U.S. exceptionalism continues. Not only is it going to be more than double the rate of 2.1% for second quarter, but it outpaces all other advanced economies. The U.S. has been the growth engine for the world. It also highlights the challenges the Fed faces. But what we should not do is take this as a signal of the all clear for 2024. As you know, I've always pushed back on the notion that we would have a recession in 2023. I'm a little bit worried about 2024. We have first the rundown in savings. That's the big issue. Secondly, what's been happening in the interest rate market is really problematic. It's problematic for businesses. It's problematic for governments, for the Fed. It's problematic for households. And that is a significant headwind to economic activity.
I think this is the strongest GDP that we're going to see, let's say, for the next 6 quarters or so, that this is a very hot reading. The consumer just had frenzied spending during the third quarter. It was kind of a surge in the services sector, yes, but also in goods spending. Entertainment was hot with these concert tours and the Barbenheimer extravaganzas. Consumers are just out spending, and it underscores the ongoing resilience and durability of the U.S. economy. The labor market's strong, wages are growing, and that's supporting the consumer. We see it yet again in this report. I do expect it to moderate going forward, but, strong report.
All right, that is some opinion coming in on the U.S. GDP print. By the way, I do want to point out that, while the U.S. markets shut lower, the U.S. futures are now well in the green. So the Dow futures are up over 100 points, perhaps in the back of that GDP number that came through. But let's also talk about Europe now, because the French CAC index was down around 25 points. The DAX was down over 1%, and the FTSE also closed with some cuts. So it was around 60 points lower at the end of the trading session. Now, the main news that really came through from the region is that the European Central Bank ended its run of interest rate hikes, and it's left rates unchanged at 4% now. And this is despite the fact that we've been talking about there are several, upside risk to inflation as well. So right now, it is held steady. ECB President Christine Lagarde also said that they will continue to remain data dependent. And on the issue of how long rates will remain high, she added that, this is not the time to be giving any kind of forward guidance. So not really saying anything on that front. But she did add that any discussion on a rate cut at this moment is premature, and that the ECB is steady and will need to hold rates for the time being, at least. That's everything that we're looking at globally. We do need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to drill it down to all of the domestic cues, also tell you about all of the stocks that will be in focus in today's trading session. So stay tuned for that. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. Now, we've gone through the global picture, but let's now talk about all of the cues that you should track for our own markets and the stocks that could be in focus in today's trading session. We have Mangalam, Vivek and Surbhi joining us to prep us up for this final trading session of the week. Guys, a very good morning to all of you. Vivek, let me come to you first because, while we were going through the global setup, there's a lot that we should track in the domestic cues as well. We have 7 Nifty companies that are going to be posting results.
Well, absolutely right. Today evening is going to be a very earnings dominated, given the fact that, as you mentioned, so many Nifty companies will be declaring the results. While we are talking about the market setup, like you mentioned earlier, the trade setup or the handover from the global equity indices is not looking too good. But what is surprising is the fact that despite such a weak handover, Asian markets are relatively firm, and even the GIFT Nifty at this point of time is indicating a flat start to our own markets. But talking about how exactly US markets performed yesterday, complete underperformance, Nasdaq underperformance continued. Along with that, crude oil prices yesterday did see almost $2 of selling off, but now Brent futures are trading close to the $88.50 a barrel mark. Now, talking about the Indian markets yesterday continued to slide for the 6th straight session. However, what was quite heartening was the fact that intraday there was quite a sharp recovery, especially in the broader end of the markets. And today, it remains to be seen whether markets can take cues from that intraday recovery and build on to those gains. Like you mentioned, so many Nifty earnings today: Reliance, BPCL, Cipla, Dr. Reddy, Maruti, and along with that, some important reactions to especially names like Colgate, Dixon. These companies declared their results post-market hours yesterday. Flat start for our own markets is what we're anticipating at this point of time.
Okay, flat start. Let's see how things really move from there, because this week has been pretty hectic for us already. But let's also talk about the individual stocks. And Surbhi is here with that entire list. Hi, Surbhi.
Hi. So first one on my list is Colgate. It was a mild miss on the revenue front, but the company saw a sharp gross margin expansion. Revenues came in at 1471 crores, EBITDA at 482 crores, and margins at 33%. Sun Pharma will also be in focus as Taro reported their numbers. The net sales came in at $148 million. They reported an operating income of $4.7 million versus an operating loss of nearly $7 million. Dixon Tech, the earnings have beaten the estimates. The revenue was largely driven by the mobile segment and the home appliance segment. The revenue was up nearly 28%, EBITDA up 37%, and PAT up 47%. Realtel, the revenues were up 40% on a year-on-year basis, EBITDA at 115 crores, and margins at 19%. Quick heel, weak set of numbers over there. Revenue down 22% and margins came in at 14% versus 28% same time last year. Home First Finance, the gross NPA was up nearly 15% on a year-on-year basis and net NPA was up nearly 16%. Aavas Financiers, the gross NPA ratio came in at 1% and the net NPA ratio came in at 0.76%.
Okay, that is a lot for us to digest. Surabhi, thanks a lot for taking us through all of that stock-specific action. But let's also bring Mangalam in with all of the futures and options cues because it is the start of a new series. Mangalam, you know, we were talking about earlier how October is normally not negative. Looks like the market and the bears really chose to challenge that.
Well, it wasn't negative until a few days ago. And now, you know, just the October series has seen a decline of 666 points on the Nifty itself, and it's the first negative October, like we spoke, since October 2018 itself. So the first negative October in the last 6 series. In fact, from the September high, we've seen a correction of nearly 1,400 points. At the same time, you know, if you look at the November series moves, this has been known for big moves on either side. So November 2020, we saw an 11% move on the upside, but of course that was an exceptional year. November 2022, last year as well, we saw a decent move of 4% on the way up itself. October to November rollovers by the participants have been 83%. So that means there is more conviction. Where is that conviction? It's unfortunately on the short side. So only 41% of the long exposure has been rolled over, whereas the shorts have been rolled over by 100% and a little more thereafter as well. The Nifty has an open interest of 1.1 crore shares. The FII long exposure at the start of the series is 11% only. So that's telling you that nearly 90% of the FII positions are on the short side. That may not necessarily be a bad thing. Why is that? Because if recent history is something to tell you, you know, June 2022, we had 15% long exposure. The Nifty rallied about 1,100 points. Thereafter, September had a 13% long exposure. The Nifty rallied 919 points. As recent as March, where the FI long exposure was just 9%, the Nifty rallied 834 points. Will that repeat in November series or not is something we'll have to watch out for. What would then be the key triggers? US bond yields is something that we'll be tracking. The US FOMC meet that takes place on November 1. All the developments on Israel-Hamas front. At the same time, we'll watch out for how the second half of Q2 results, a lot of them reporting today, along with the festive season, will be something we'll watch.
All right, we're going to watch for that. For now, it's looking like, at least for today, the start is going to be absolutely flat. So let's see how the rest of the session pans out, considering that we have so many earnings as well, which are going to be coming through. But speaking of earnings, the big one clearly is Reliance Industries, and they will be posting earnings post-market hours. Good growth is expected in the digital services and retail businesses, while a strong refining margin is expected to be offset by weak petchem spreads. So Sonia is here with all of the key expectations. Sonia.
Well, thanks for that. It is expected to be a stable quarter for Reliance Industries this quarter around. But let's first take a look at what the stock performance of the company has been this year. This year so far, Reliance Industries is down 11%, while from a 52-week high, the stock is down about 21%. However, this quarter will be a stable quarter for the company. On the revenue front, we're looking at a 6.7% growth at a little over 2.2 lakh crores. I'll come to the reasons in a bit, but before that, on the EBITDA front, it's a 4% growth that we're looking at, a little under 40,000 crores of EBITDA, while on the profitability front as well, there will be a slight amount of growth this time around for Reliance Industries. On the margin front, 17.9% is what we're going with. And the number to watch out for on the profitability front is 17,974 crores, which is a growth of around 12%. Now let's take it to the qualitative aspects. The consumer-facing businesses, which is both retail as well as telecom, are expected to do well for Reliance Industries. Apart from that, there is also good strength that we are seeing in the refining business for Reliance Industries. However, that will be offset by weak petchem spreads for the business. If you look at the Singapore gross refining margins, they expanded to $9.8 a barrel compared to $4 a barrel last quarter. So the standalone EBITDA is expected to rise by about 9% due to an increase in the KG Basin gas production and a likely sequential improvement in the gross refining margins, as you just saw. But all of this would be, offset by the quarter-on-quarter weaker petchem spreads for the company. The consolidated EBITDA is expected to go up by about 4% on a quarter-on-quarter basis, But a couple of key internals to watch out for, or key things in the commentary. Further clarity on the 75,000 crore announcements in the new energy business is keenly awaited by the street. Apart from that, any growth in retail store additions would be closely watched out for. And also pricing action in the telecom space is something that is a key monitorable this time around. But all in all, expect a stable set of numbers from Reliance Industries.
Okay, Sonia, thanks a lot for taking us through all of those details. That's what we can expect from Reliance in terms of the earnings, and those are some of the monitorables as well. But we don't need to get into a short break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the commodities market. Crude has pulled back a tad, so we'll bring you the details on the other side. Welcome back. You're still tuned into Power Breakfast. Now, as the Israel-Hamas war rages on, the Gaza Health Ministry released the names of 7,000 Palestinians killed in Israeli airstrikes. Yesterday, the Israel Defense Forces conducted an overnight raid in northern Gaza as part of their preparation for the next stage of the war. They claim to have struck several Hamas cells and infrastructure during the raid as well. The deputy chief of the Hamas Intelligence Bureau, Shadi Baroud, who was accused of working with the Hamas leader in preparing attacks against Israel, was also killed in an airstrike in Gaza. Meanwhile, in a joint statement, the Arab nations condemned Israel's attack against Hamas and said that the attacks did not justify breaking the law and neglecting Palestinian rights. So that is where things stand right now. This is the 21st day of the conflict and the war between Israel and the Hamas. But with that, let's also move on and talk about the commodities now. Manisha joins us with an update on how things have really moved. Manisha.
Thank you for that, Pavitra. Well, the point is that no crude supplies have been disrupted yet because of the Israel-Hamas war. So we keep looking at volatile crude oil prices depending on every news data that comes in from that region. So we are looking at crude prices headed for a weekly decline. We're down by 5% in sense of prices. This is after the prices gained 10% in previous 2 weeks. Also, the markets are looking at the US GDP numbers that grew better than expectation. But the weak oil demand from Europe and China continues to weigh onto the markets right now. It also is about the U.S. Fed meeting next week. Markets will get cues from that. But when you look at the metal prices, we've seen some support continue into this area. So gold is headed for a weekly gain. It's trading at a 5-month highs, and most of the metal prices also trading in the green.
Okay, Manisha, thanks a lot for bringing us that update on the commodities. But with that, some more very important news. A court in Qatar has announced the death penalty for 8 Indian nationals who were former Navy personnel. The nationals were working with a security solutions and training company and have been under arrest since August of last year. Now, the charges have not been made public and bail pleas have been rejected several times over. The Indian government has called the verdict deeply shocking and I quote, are awaiting the detailed judgment. We are in touch with the family members and the legal team and we are exploring all legal options. We attach high importance to this case and have been following it closely and we will continue to extend all consular and legal assistance. End of quote. So that is a very important story and we will keep bringing you any updates that we can on that front. But with that, we're going to have to wind down in this edition of Power Breakfast with the news that Asian markets are holding up pretty well. The Nikkei is up over 300 points. The implied open for our own markets is absolutely flat. So let's see how things really move. Thanks for tuning into Power Breakfast. We have Bazaar Morning Call up in 2.